In the 47-year career of legendary head coach Jim Boeheim, Syracuse men's basketball finished below 500 just once. Well, after the Orange's 77-62 loss to Louisville today, they sit at 15-15 and risk becoming just the second straight year that the Orange finished with an under 500 record. Another poor performance from the Orange, but a positive second half mean there's a lot to break down. And we're going to do that right here on Orange Press Pass, which starts right now. Welcome inside our CitrusTV studios for another edition of Orange Press Pass. I'm Nathaniel Cunningham. That's John Boccio. That's Griffin, Marcy. So much to talk about with this game, and especially with the parity between the first half and the second half. John, what is your first thoughts from this 15-point loss by the Orange?
My first thought, and this is not usual for me by any means, but why am I not mad at this loss? 41-38 in the second half for Syracuse. I mean, that is the type of stuff that we haven't heard of in quite some time. Positive basketball being played by the Orange? I mean, if it's going to happen, I'm going to recognize it because we don't get to be too positive about SU basketball all that often. So, again, I'm not that mad at it. After a horrendous first half, SU really turned it around in the second.
Well, you know why you're not that mad at it, John, is because you've seen the same old story time and time again. That's going to be my first thought is we've seen this movie. It's the same thing every time. It's one good half, one bad half. It's the same chapter of the same book that I really wish we were all done reading at this point in time. And I don't like reading in general, but I sure don't like reading this book because it's just the same concept. Stagnant offense, lack of effort defensively, and just time and time again, Syracuse comes through with the same product.
To that point, the same old, same old. It's the second time this season Syracuse has dropped 4 straight games. But how did they get to this 15-point loss down in the KFC Yum Center against the Louisville Cardinals? Well, it didn't start well early because this Cardinals squad that is the best offense in the ACC showed why. You had an early slam there from Sonata Frew, and this is what was the beginning of a kill shot for the Cardinals. If you're not familiar with that term, that's 10 straight unanswered points or more, and it was capped off by a nice 3 from Isaac McNeely, finishing through the contact as well. He makes that free throw, and it was an 11-0 run for Louisville. They just also couldn't miss from deep. Another triple in the first half. They were doubling up the Orange at one point, and Syracuse couldn't hit from beyond the arc. 0 for 11 from deep. The third time this season, they've gone zeros from beyond the arc. Syracuse just couldn't get anything going, and you see that. How about that? 21 points, their lowest number of the half. They put up 24 against Duke, and it resulted in the fifth worst loss in program history. Carmelo Anthony not happy about it at all. But in the second half, Syracuse started to gain some momentum. To John's point, something that the Orange haven't done a whole lot this season was play well in those second 20 minutes. Syracuse started to do that as well. Nate Kings nailing that first triple for the Orange, but this is a Louisville team that you knew was going to compete, and they kept coming through as well. Javon Hadley had a nice little triple. Defensively, though, Syracuse was able to pick it up in the second half. It turned to some easy offense, down to a 13-point game. But, like I mentioned, this is a Louisville squad that has the best offense in the ACC. Their ball movement was excellent. It just continued to work, and by that point, it was too much for the Orange to overcome. Louisville takes a 77-62 win over Syracuse. John, again, there was those positives in the second half, but this is just the same old story.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not gonna sit here and say that this is like a good loss by any means, but
No such thing.
no such thing as a good loss. Absolutely not. And once again, like Griffin mentioned in his first thought, one half was bound to be bad, and it just happened to be the first half. If you had any essence of an offense in that first half, this game is a whole lot closer than 15 points. Unfortunately, you put up 21 and then double yourself up in the second half because that was the only way you could claw your way back in.
It was something that it was just really ugly, and you're playing one of the better teams in the conference, so it is what you can expect at this point in the penultimate game of a extremely disappointing season, but it's frustrating to see that opportunity there. see what the picture could look like. You saw the second half. You beat one of the best teams in the conference in the second half. If you put half that effort in the first half, maybe you're looking at something special, but just time and time again.
It's tough to see bright spots like a shimmering chandelier and then see performances like this as well. But speaking of shimmering and beautiful bright spots as well, we've got a reporter, Max Gifford, who's down in Louisville right now. I mean, Max, so much to take away from this game. But I've got to ask you first, why can't Syracuse play at both ends of the floor at the same time?
That seems to be the million-dollar question all season long for this SU team. Why can't they consistently play on both ends of the floor? Because at the start, SU looked great. 4 blocks in the first 4 minutes after having no blocks against Wake Forest on Saturday. You think maybe this team has turned a new leaf. Granted, with 2 games to go. But then all of a sudden, once the starters come off the floor, that's when things started to spiral. And I think that's the issue. This team just doesn't have any consistency with all its players and playing on both ends of the floor. And Adrian Autry just spoke post-game, and one of the things that he was continuing to harp on was the fact that the Orange were not paying attention to the scouting reports. And they haven't been paying attention to these scouting reports all season. Adrian Autry was emphatic that this Louisville team is such a big screening team, and Syracuse just didn't have a response for when Louisville was screening all the time. They weren't willing to try to move off. They weren't trying to get around these guards. They were just kind of standing there saying, what do I do next? They need to pay more attention to these scouting reports, ultimately down the road in the ACC tournament, which is coming up soon, but still fell short today. And that first half inconsistency is really what plagued the Orange in this one.
Yeah, inconsistency was definitely a consistent factor for the Orange in this one. What was also a pretty consistent factor was the guards of Louisville. McNeely and Cornwell were phenomenal in this game. At the end of the first half, had the same amount of points as Syracuse combined. What made those two so effective in this one?
Well, John, I could have told you that Isaac McNeely was going to go off. If you remember a couple seasons ago when Syracuse was playing Virginia in the first ACC road game, he exploded for 22 points on 6 3-pointers and just came one short of that today with 5. And this team has so many good shooters, John. I think part of the issue was the fact that Syracuse maybe wasn't coming off these screens, but I think the other part of it is the 2-3 zone was not good. And Adrian Autry said, I thought it was pretty good, but it allows so many teams to get these threes, these open threes for that matter, and the ball movement for the Cardinals was phenomenal today. And a big reason for that was because the 2-3 zone does open the options for this Cardinals offense to move the ball all around, to give them more open chances from 3. I think they ended up shooting 32 shots from distance today because they had ample opportunities within that Syracuse 2-3 zone. And even if Adrian Autry was complimentary of it after the game, I think you look at the assist numbers and you look at the 3-point numbers, 10 more 3-pointers for Louisville, so that's 30 more points on the board. And Syracuse ultimately losing by that point just wasn't enough today.
Max, it's been a theme all season long is, there's spurts of good, there's spurts of great, and there's spurts of really bad. What to you stood out today as to why this game was so streaky at times?
I have no idea, Griffin, to be honest. I've been fascinated by this team all season with how easily they can just flip the switch. They can either score at will or they can go cool completely. I mean, there were times where SU would go on a quick 6-0, 7-0, and 9-0. They had that 13-2 run at one point, and then Louisville went on 2 separate 10-0 runs when Syracuse had seemingly nothing going on offense. So I really think it comes down to that consistency factor like I was talking about with Nate just moments ago, because this team just has not put together a full 40 minutes, especially in these road ACC contests. That's now 7 straight road losses for the Orange to end the regular season. And you have to think with the ACC tournament coming up that things are looking pretty bleak for the Orange, who now have an 0-10 record against Quad 1 opponents away from the Dome. And Louisville was simply just the better team today, and even if Syracuse had some runs, just seemingly didn't matter today because the Cardinals shot the ball so well.
Well, Max, thank you so much. Normally, this is the time where we say safe trips back to Syracuse, but we know you're headed to Biloxi, Mississippi with your final time on our Citrus TV program. So we appreciate your time and enjoy the schnocks down there in Biloxi. But we've come up on our first break here on Orange Press Pass. When we come back, we'll break down a little bit more about this game, get into the X's and O's of why Louisville was able to dominate Syracuse. Welcome back into Orange Press Pass. Nathaniel, Cunningham, John Boccio, Griffin, and Marcy breaking down everything between Syracuse and Louisville. 15-point loss for the Orange. But before we get too in-depth of that, we need to take a trip around the NCAA and see some of the other games that are going on. And oh my goodness, number 5 Florida put a walloping on Mississippi State.
It's a good Gator squad down there in Gainesville, but you know what else stands out to me, Nate, is Miami, Ohio barely staying alive. You know, there's a lot of talk these days about whether or not they can get into the NCAA tournament with a loss in their conference tournament, and they're getting closer and closer to that undefeated regular season.
Guys, are we not going to mention the fact that 3 ranked teams, 2 of them top 15, one of them top 10, all lost to unranked teams today? Arizona State puts the weight down on Kansas. Texas Tech maybe shows its true colors without JT Toppin and loses to a potential tournament team in TCU. And then Alabama loses by 10 to Georgia. A great football rivalry. Kind of the same in basketball. And, well, the Bulldogs come out on top over the Crimson Tide. This is March at its finest.
And let's not forget about UCLA up 13 at Nebraska at half. But not the only bit of action we've got going on. Also around the ACC, we took a look at this a little bit earlier. Clemson almost sneaking out a big one over North Carolina, John.
Yeah, North Carolina barely scraped away in that game. Plus, Virginia barely escapes Wake Forest. So, a couple interesting games that Syracuse didn't really have any stakes in either of them. Wake Forest still could potentially tie for the last spot with Syracuse if it does lose its last game of the season. But overall, these standings don't necessarily affect SU all too much.
That's why it's such a shame for Syracuse that, you know, there's no meaningful games going on in March right now for Syracuse. That should be the expectation for the program, and for fans to be like, oh well, like it's a bad spot to be in if you're a Syracuse program.
Something to look out for, though, is that Pittsburgh game against Florida State. It's an opportunity for Syracuse to maybe scout, but like Max said, apparently Syracuse isn't really following that scouting report all too well. Maybe it's because they haven't learned that Syracuse can't really shoot the tray ball all so well. 0 for 11 in the first half. Really just an abysmal performance shooting the ball, John.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the easiest way that you could put it at all. I mean, 0 for 11 in the first half, especially after you had a season-high 10 threes against Wake Forest, at least in a singular half. That was insanity. And then you turn around to Louisville, who isn't even the best defensive team in the conference, definitely an offense-heavy team, and you just cannot shoot the ball at all. It was so disappointing. SU didn't make a single shot outside the paint in the first half. That is obscene.
Couldn't hit the broadside of a barn out there, and it was just so crazy to see how from Wake Forest first half. You hit 10 threes in that first half, and then to just go with nothing is really just absurd. But it comes down to the same concepts on offense, which is a lack of fundamental concepts, where it is just my turn, your turn, and we'll all just pass the ball around, and we can all jack up a three and have a little three-point contest of our own, and they're not winning it.
In that second half, Syracuse went 4 for 8 from beyond the arc, but it compares nothing to the fact that Louisville went 14 for 35 from deep. That's 40%, in case you didn't want to do the math. But the reason they were able to get those 14 threes is because Louisville was swinging the ball around so well. They were passing it, getting their open teammates open. They finished this game with 17 assists. Griffin, is ball movement really Syracuse need to lock down this ball movement because Louisville was just dominating offensively?
Absolutely, and that story comes down to just making plays. And they were without one of their best point guards out there tonight, and that's Michael Brown, who was not out there. And to still have such a great assist to field goal ratio is something that just shows it's a fundamental concept within the Louisville system that allows everyone instilled upon making that extra pass and not just all playing by themselves. They've moved the ball on the perimeter, whether it's dribble handoffs, isolated action. They all work together as a team and just passing around.
And the strength of Syracuse is meant to be its athleticism. They roll out one of the tiniest lineups in Power 5 basketball, yet nobody moves off the ball. It's like an offensive set for SU where you don't see anyone moving around or switching or getting over screens or precisely getting under screens. It is a defensive disaster class on the other side of the floor because Syracuse does not move with their defenders. If you're going to roll out a lineup where your tallest guy is 6'9" and William Kyle, you have to switch progressively, and that is just not what SU did tonight.
And the 2-3 zone didn't help that either. Louisville was just passing the ball all around the outside. But there was the positive for Syracuse in the fact that they won the second half, outscored the Cardinals 41-38 in that second period. John, Syracuse looked like we thought Syracuse could look all year in those final 20 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. You outscored Louisville in that second half, and granted, was probably part of it the fact that Louisville had taken its foot off the gas? Sure. But at the same time, Syracuse was actually hitting tough shots. They were creating for themselves, setting good screens. The pick and roll action was there. That is a lot of stuff that we have not seen throughout the season. And you see it right here on your screen. William Kyle down low, does what he's supposed to do, gets a good layup up for 2 and in. Syracuse was making good plays, having good sets, and it all ran a lot of the time through William Kyle, who made a major impact in this game against Duke, and tonight it really showed that when he can be a focal point of this offense, that is where Syracuse thrives. I mean, on the game, you had Will Kyle, who had 8 points on 4 of 5 from the field, 7 boards as well. Dominance down low is a big part of what Syracuse tries to do sometimes, and when it's there, it works out really well. When it's not, it's bad.
It only works when you play with pace, which is what I said was one of the keys going into this game, is playing as fast as you can, getting up and down the floor, because you struggle in the half court. You don't have a good point guard system at this point in time, so you need to be up and down the floor quick, and that's what they did in the second half. Shocking, it worked.
Let's speak about playing with pace. The Cardinals played with pace, and they come out with a 15-point victory. And so that means that our player of the game has got to come from Louisville, and it's none other than Ryan Conwell. Finished the game with 23 points, had 7 boards as well, and had 5 triples. Went 5 for 11 from beyond the arc. His pace in the open court allowed him to get down, and he played some stellar defense as well. How about 2 steals to his name and really locking up Syracuse in that first half? So Ryan Conwell, our Orange Press Pass player of the game. We've come up on another break here on OPP, but when we return, we're going to have a little bit more about what this means for the ACC tournament. And John and Griffin, they're going to build a couple brackets.
Like sweet you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back into Orange Press Pass. I'm Nathaniel Cunningham. There's so much to break down with this Syracuse 15-point loss to Louisville. So let's not waste any time in getting into our moment of the game. And it happened midway through the first half. I used the term earlier in the show called a kill shot. What that is when a team goes on a 10-0 run and essentially puts a nice buffer between them and their opponent. Well, Louisville had not just one, but two of them in the first half. It was really what allowed this Cardinal squad to get a 20-point lead, one that they would not falter for the rest of the game. And so although Syracuse saw some nice action in the second half and made it at least somewhat competitive, it wasn't enough for the Orange to fight back and make it a single-digit ball game nonetheless. But that's enough of the moment of the game. Now, John Boccio, Griffin, Marcy, they're over at the wall to play a little bit prediction and walk through what our ACC brackets could look like.
Thanks, Nate. Well, with just one game left in the season, it's time for some predictions. So we're going to run you through what the dream scenario would be for Syracuse to build some momentum in the ACC tournament. Griffin, you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
Let's show you it. So first off, we've got actually the best case scenario being Syracuse losing out and dropping to the 15th seed. And the way that that will happen, you'll lose to Pitt on Saturday, and then you go up against Florida State, a team that you've already beat and put up 94 points against. I think the best chance Syracuse might have in the first round is genuinely by going into the ACC tournament as cold as humanly possible.
And you know, we talked earlier about no good losses. You know what? Saturday might be a good loss if you could draw Florida State, because that's a Florida State team that the score just indicates a little bit too close of how that game actually was. Syracuse was in full control of that Florida State game. I think that's a team that you could easily beat in the first round of the tournament there. You shot 60% from the field, and that's a Syracuse offense that's just not that good. So if you're shooting 60% against anybody, that's a team that you should want to face again. I have no idea how Florida State got to 500 in conference play, so it should easily be a matchup that you want to draw going into this first round.
Oh, without a doubt in my mind. Plus the fact that Florida State, has already been a downfall of a program in itself. So why don't you just match up both programs that have been on the
See
decline?
which one explodes first.
Exactly. So with that, Syracuse, let's say, magically pulls Florida State in round one and wins that game as well. What would the next round look like? Well, you see over here, SMU has the 7 seed right now. It plays a tough game against Miami tomorrow. If it wins in that game, it should probably stay in the 7 seed. And even if it loses, some other contests around the ACC might keep SMU at that 7. So SU not only wins in round 1 against Florida State, but then it plays another team that it's already beat in the Mustangs. Who says it's impossible to beat them twice in a row? I'm not saying it is.
It's hard to beat a team twice, but you know what? You got one victory under your belt. Why not grab 2? That was a game that Syracuse probably could have played a little bit better in as well, and they relied on Nate King's buzzer. I think, you got a little bit of momentum going in you and a little bit of anger from how you ended the regular season. That's a game that, if Syracuse wins that, all of a sudden, you won 2 in a row in March, maybe they're going on a little run. Maybe you're seeing a couple more Orange Press passes about the basketball team.
You've got a conversation to be had with how Syracuse has played SMU and Florida State in the past. So you go in cold, maybe you leave a little bit hot, and then obviously that's when the tougher competition starts to come into play. Your Louisvilles, your NC States, your Miamis, your UNCs, your Dukes of the world, where that one's going to be a little bit difficult, but still.
The dream kind of shuts off after 2 rounds.
Exactly.
And then the alarm clock goes off.
It's not saying that it's impossible, but it might be plausible. Who knows? So our dream scenario for Syracuse fans and the team itself, you got Florida State in the first round after losing to Pitt, and then you draw SMU in the second round. All right, that's all for bracketology from Griffin, Marcy, and John Boccio. Next up, we've got Sound Off in the next segment with me and Griffin. You won't want to miss it here on Orange Press Pass.
test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Wrapping up shop here on Orange Press Pass. Nathaniel, Cunningham, John Boccio, Griffin, Marcy. We're still got a couple of things to go over. I know these guys were excited to sound off on this game, but before we get to that one, we have to look at the upcoming schedule for Syracuse men's basketball. And you see just two lines there. They take on Pittsburgh for the regular season finale. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, though, John. It just doesn't look like Syracuse has got really anything to look forward to after that Pittsburgh game.
No, that's when the going gets tough and the tough may get going, as in Syracuse may be going out of Duluth, Georgia a little bit early. Who knows?
Oh, it's going to be a tough trip for Syracuse, no matter where things end up down in the ACC tournament play. And it's just time will tell, and Syracuse fans at this point just counting down the days and left in the Austria tenure.
The Orange are 3-10 away from the JMA Wireless Dome. Nonetheless, it's time for Griffin and John to sound off.
Well, guys, I know we tend to be negative, and we tend to say all the things that have gone wrong this season, and I could regurgitate it all over and over and over again. But for once, Syracuse men's basketball gave me something to be positive about. And that doesn't happen all too often. But what I will say is that this one could have been worse. Syracuse could have marched into Louisville and lost this game by 25, 30, maybe even 35 points. And that's what this game was on track for early on. Syracuse only puts up 21 in the first half, its lowest scoring half of the season. Yet, SU showed life in the second half. Since when does that happen? So that's why I say to all SU fans, I know everyone can be overly negative sometimes. A lot of the time, in fact. However, when you are presented with an opportunity to say more could have gone wrong than actually did, that is where you have to just lay back and say, okay, it's fine. It could have been so much worse. So that's why I say it could have been worse in this loss to Louisville.
It's been worse all season, and that's why my message for SU fans is going to be just sit back, reassess, and retool, because at this point in time, there's no sense in dwelling on what this season has been, whether you thought this team should go to the NCAA tournament or not. They're not going to. And now, at this point in time, it's going to think back is, do you bring Autry back for another year? How much are you going to invest in the NIL program? It's all about next year at this point in time. You need to figure out who you can retain from this year's roster, who you're going to hunt for in the portal, who you're going to try and bring back, and who you're going to try and bring in on the sidelines. Now, all your focus should not be on the negatives of this season. It should be focusing on the positives of next year and what you can do to get back to Syracuse basketball.
Speaking of positives, hey, we should have some more positives on our next Orange Press Pass at Syracuse men's lacrosse versus Johns Hopkins. Had a couple of tough road slids, but they got back on track, back in the win column, and now they take on a great Blue Jays squad. That'll happen this weekend. But it's enough from us. time is done. Wall-to-wall coverage from Live CC to Orange Press Pass. It's tough to say that this one is all over. Huge thanks to everybody behind the scenes. Helaina Stovin, Chris Boylan, Luke Moyler, Shane Aldridge, everybody behind the scenes that has helped out and made this live coverage happen. We thank you so much and have a wonderful night.